An episode of Kap Or No Kap. I am your host, Kevin C. Meggett, and today I have a very wonderful, exciting guest, someone that I know personally, who was a former city councilman, is a community leader, deals with children, helps children, organizes children in the community, and overall just active. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Andy King. How you doing, Mr. King?
Pleasure to be here, my brother.
I'm glad you're here. Glad to have you. You know, we always stay in touch, and
That's right.
A lot of the political arenas that I'm in now is directly because of the work that you've done with the YEP program. You want to elaborate what YEP stands for?
YEP is Youth Empowerment Program.
Right.
My wife and I, Neva Shillingford King, we started it over 15 years ago. Actually, we started it. And we started, it came out of, we were supporting Fernando Ferrer, who was running for mayor at that time. And I was working on his campaign. And, you know, I organized a number of youth, and we called ourselves the Youthful Ferrer. So after the campaign was over, we know that Freddie did not win.
Right.
Mike Bloomberg won.
Right.
The kids were still energized. Say, what do we do now, Mr. King? Out of that, we bred the Youth Empowerment Program to allow kids to be civically engaged, community active, but more importantly, empowering them to be leaders.
That's right.
So we are 15 years in after being at a number of schools. When we first started, we was at Richard Green Middle School, 113, my former junior high school, Bolinville, at the when I was there. Then we moved to Evander. Then we even went to Truman. We even went to MS 181. We moved around it because what we were doing, we were held youth forum. Like you said, we were held youth forum, and we just did a 15-year one. But the school who would have turned out the most students to the youth forum is where we moved the program to.
Wow.
Because they showed the engagement and excitement of the program from those students. So we moved the program around throughout the district. So then COVID hit, and we just did some virtual stuff, but we kept the kids engaged because more importantly, it's about knowing what's happening in your neighborhood, being a voice in your neighborhood, and when things are right, you stand up, and when things are wrong, you talk about it, and when it's time to celebrate, let's celebrate.
No, that's great. That's great. By the way, both of my daughters are products of your fine work, so I want to really thank you. I could also remember year after year, they would have the Black, Puerto Rican, Asian caucus, is it the caucus weekend up in Albany?
Yeah.
And you got a real chance to see how government works, the ins and outs, and you see everyone from city, state, all there and putting on these like workshops. And you know, shout out to you because you and your wife, Miss Neva Shillingford, you guys did that out of your own dime with these kids, man, and that's very you to be celebrated and commended. And so then you went on you became a city councilman. And that was a lot of fun too, right? So you talk to me about that. How did that happen?
Well, I never imagined in my life that I would ever be an elected official in government.
Okay.
When I came out of college, it was about playing sports, being a coach, being a teacher, being a social worker, and I actually worked for the city of New York as a caseworker at ACS for 10 years. Oh,
wow.
Investigating child abuse and neglect. And then from there, doing work with Sports Special Olympics. And, you know, that was a lot of fun, challenging, but it allows people to be more sensitive to some of our brothers and sisters who are not as physically capable to do some of the things that other folks can, but they do deliver for their existence each and every day.
Right.
Then 1199 said, come on, be a part of what we got going here at SEIU, the largest healthcare union in the country, over 425,000 members, 5 states strong. And after that, people say, you know what, you should run.
Yeah.
The work I was doing in the neighborhood, the youth piece that I was doing, I was running a basketball league, and then we started the Bronx Youth Empowerment Program, and you should just run. I'm like, I never thought about running. I said, well, if you ask me to run, I'll do it for the people. So I ran.
Right.
I ran in 2008, 2009. Wasn't successful in 2009.
Right.
But, you know, I was grateful and thankful because the people asked me, and my first time run, 34% of the vote. Yeah.
I was there.
So, and there was a lot of folks in the race, and then when they extended term limit, the incumbent came back in. So it kind of confused some people. But hey, when the door was opened up again, I ran again because the people urged me, go back to running and help us out, be a voice, be a face. Got 96% of the vote, about 36% of people voted for me.
Wow.
In the district. And that was nothing to sneeze at.
No.
And so I was so thankful.
It's almost 100% of the district.
Yeah. So it was. I was thankful and grateful, and I gave my time, effort, and energy because the neighborhood that elected me is the neighborhood that raised me, educated me, and I lived all my life. So it's a joy. It's
Right.
definitely a joy.
And you did a lot, and I want to add, you did a lot of great work in the time you were in city council. So, like, I'm kind of wondering now, like, I'm looking at these city council races as we're going now, and mayoral races, and I'm saying to myself, you know, like, you were very transparent when you were but I don't see that same transparency in the mayoral race, in the Bronx Borough President's race, or even the city council races, you know. So I think politics has now shifted, so to speak, or the dynamics of it. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to play it safe. Depending on who I have in front or behind me, I don't need to have that debate. I don't need to tell you what my policy and procedures are. And I think you kind of it's misguided trust when it comes to the people, because after all, elected officials work for the people.
Yes.
But the sentiment now is that the people work for the elected official, you know what I mean? And that was never really the case when you ran, because you had an open door policy. People came to you, they knew exactly, oh, let me go talk to Mr. King and get my issues resolved. So I brought you on the show. It's really crazy because we're live today, but I have a tape show with you that I'm going to air in the future. And so I don't want to ask too many of those questions again.
Okay.
I want to talk about the mayoral race today. Who do you like?
You know, I have to do an assessment when you talk about who's running for the mayor and who can actually do the job. And I think whoever does the job has to be a great executor, a great person who can bring people together,
Right.
A great person who's focused, a person who has a vision, and a person who's not afraid to say no to the people who think they have the power to come in and move and direct where government houses should go.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, there are a number of candidates that I think will qualify to do their job. First on my list is Borough President of Brooklyn, Eric Adams.
Okay.
I believe he's very capable of doing the job. I believe actually Ray McGuire is really capable of doing the job due to the fact that he's an executor. And there has been a template already in place, because Mayor Bloomberg, people try to say
Right.
because he doesn't have political experience, but he has executive experience. That's what you
Right,
always
Mayor
demand.
Bloomberg didn't have
Yeah.
that experience. He gained that experience when he got in office.
You gain it, but the executive branch of government is the mayor's office. So you just need an executive.
Right.
He's been an executive.
Yes.
You know, his resume says he's
Absolutely
been
right.
executive, run $1 billion company.
Yes,
You know how to move money. You know how to move people. That has talent to be a billionaire. You know, you just don't, win the lottery and become a billionaire and all of a sudden know how to manage billions of dollars.
Right.
He earned it, he made it, and he's smart.
Right.
You know, you can't take away the education that the gentleman has as well. So I think he's very capable of doing this job. And if I could go down the line, Kathleen Garcia is someone I've had the privilege of working with.
Okay.
In the city council when she was handling sanitation, and when she was appointed to the food czar when the pandemic hit. I like her style. I like the way she moves. I like the way she thinks, and I think she's capable because she's done similar jobs.
Right.
So when I go down the list of folks, those are the first three that are at the top of my list: Eric Adams, Ray McGuire, and then I go to Kathleen Garcia.
Okay.
And then after that, everyone can, it gets personal, whichever direction you want to go.
Right. Well, I mean, I like Eric Adams as well, but I think I like Ray McGuire a little bit more. My only issue is that I don't know enough about him. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Right. But I know Eric Adams definitely has the experience. Ray McGuire actually is talking a lot of the language that I would like to hear, like creating jobs or job creation and things like that. And so I don't know if you know. Well, you would know. I have a resolution that I'm pushing hard on for foundational Black Americans. And one of the things that I would like to do is make foundational Black Americans tax exempt for city taxes. And I would love to have any of those candidates take a look or listen, because I have it on YouTube as well. I put sound to it so that you don't even have to read it, because most people don't want to read these days. So I had it read And shout out to Kim Goodluck Seabrook, who did the voiceover for me. But you know, I believe foundational Black Americans have paid enough.
Yes, we have.
And
Yes, we have.
I don't believe that I believe that we should be tax exempt. And I would love to sit down and get their perspectives. You know, when I hear these other candidates, they tell me their vision of what America is, or their vision of what New York City is. And you can't comfortably have that conversation and exclude the group of people that gave you that platform to even say that. You know what I mean? So I know I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I would love to have all of the candidates really to look at this resolution and just let's have a conversation. Let's just really talk about it. I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out, when has it become un-American for us to have a difference of opinion or to challenge anything? But that seems to be the status quo now. You know, like if you don't go with what's going on, you're hating. It's no, I'm not hating. I'm stating. You know what I mean? So that's a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it, right? Now let's talk about the Bronxborough president's race. Who do you like for Bronxborough president?
You know, I came out of a room that there were a lot of folks who wanted to be the borough president, and we have, I believe it's probably about 4 elected officials who are currently in office running.
Right.
And I think there's 2 other gentlemen who are not in office that I believe are running
right.
as well. I would say to the folks right now, a lot of this is personal for me.
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved to have been in the race, but the Lord said He had another plan for me.
Okay.
So I think one person who has been true, trying to stay to a cause and not sell anything, any body parts to get in there. I think Fernando Cabrera is one that can deliver as being the borough president. And I would urge folks out there take a look and listen to him. Yeah, take a look and listen to what he's saying. His story, his work, and again, you're not going to agree with every 100%, and there will be people who are going to sell you a bill of goods. There are going to be people who are going to dance around. There's going to be people who are going to give you a lot of soothsayers.
Hold on to that for 1 minute. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back with Kap or No Kap.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
We're back. Welcome back to Kap or No Kap. I'm your host, Kevin C. Meggett. I'm with former city councilman, community organizer, community advocate, Andy King.
Thank you.
So we were talking about Bronxborough presidents, and I just don't have, again, my vote, I'm just a different, I'm cut from a different cloth, meaning whoever embraces that resolution, I'll embrace their vote, because voting has always been what we call quid pro quo, or something for something. So I'm, as a block, and this is what I believe, that especially foundational Black Americans, we have to start leveraging our vote. And one of the things that I learned, and shout out to 1199, who I was a political organizer for a nice little run. And I would like to say that was one of the best jobs I ever had. I'm not advocating for a job right now, but it was one of the best jobs that I had, because it allowed me to become engaged, and certain things that I learned, I even brought into my everyday life, like quid pro quo. That's something that 11 I learned from 1199, and another thing that I learned from 1199 was the fact that they weren't pro-Democrat nor pro-Republican. They put an interest on the table, and whoever facilitated that interest, that was the direction they were going. So in my everyday life now, I look at, we have an interest. And if you're a Democrat, you're a Republican, you're whoever could talk to that interest.
Right.
Foundational Black Americans don't have friends. We have an interest.
Right.
Now anyone could be a friend of our interest. And we have to kind of get that ball going. And another thing that I'm learning too is that there's a lack of passing the baton. Like you have, and I think that's the biggest thing in politics, but especially as it pertains to foundational Black Americans. A lot of them would love to die in office. and instead of grooming someone young, like 20, 25 years old or whatever, grooming that person to really come up with a vision. So, I mean, our community needs a lot of work. I could talk about other people's, other groups' political agenda, but I'm not qualified, so I don't do it. I can only talk about mine.
Right.
I could never tell Hispanics how to be Hispanic. I can't tell Middle Easterns how to be Middle Eastern. I can't tell Africans how to be African, nor can they tell me how to be foundational Black American.
But everybody will try.
But everyone will try, and I'm quick to pump them brakes.
Yes.
Like, hold on, you're not qualified, you know. And that kind of leads me where I'm going for my next, the HR 40. Like I noticed there's a lot of people that are signed on to HR 40, but it doesn't have the oomph. It doesn't have the drive. It doesn't have the teeth, I would say, behind it. And HR 40, a lot of people don't know, it's been around for a very, very, very long time. And it's just the study of, should we get reparations for slavery? There's nothing else to study. We already passed the test.
True.
We hurting.
True.
You know, we busting out through the seams. So, why do you think HR 40 doesn't get the attention it deserves? I mean, and I'll add on to what you're saying.
Right. Well, I like what you mentioned before with 1199. When it comes to interest, you know, their motto is, we have permanent interests, not permanent friends.
That's right.
And when you're able to do that, you can focus on delivering on your interests. When you're catering to appeasing people, then you mess up your interests.
Right.
And never form a steady agenda that actually gets you to the finish line. In politics, that does happen. A lot of people don't have an interest. They have the interest of the day. And if the interest does not conform to their existence, then there's a new interest that hits the table before they can even walk out the door. That's the sad reality in politics. And I've walked and I've been a part of it. And so when you're talking about a study of something, and then in the council, that sometimes I used to push back on it when some of my colleagues would say, well, we want to put a study to say, we want to know how many kids are taking the bus in the morning, or how many children are, well, you know, it's not that difficult to find out how many kids are taking the bus. Or they come up with studies for things that we already know. We want to take a study to find out if Black people are really being abused in the streets. I mean, some of the studies that they asked for is a way to say we got some backup data for what we want to do. But sometimes you know what you need to do without having to create another job, because once you create studies, someone's getting paid to do a study.
Right.
Now, necessarily that study can come back, and I've been in government. I had to do a study. They wanted me to do a study because I was trying to raise the age for the fire department so for more Blacks and Hispanics could get into the fire department.
Okay.
Well, they wanted to pass. First, it became so complicated for them because there were so many grandfather rules. Because at the end of the day, the discrimination that's been happening through so many of our systems in this country tend to make sure that Blacks, and I'm telling to my Black and Hispanic brothers, if I may, if you're from Puerto Rico, if you're from the Dominican Republic, if you're from Honduras, if you're from Mexico, if you're from Ecuador, they'll give you a wake-up call. You're Black in America. So once these rules that were in effect, whether you are from Jamaica, Haiti, Trinidad, or Domingo, or Georgia, or Alabama, or St. Kitts, or Montserrat, the rules of engagement are different for Blacks.
Right.
And so when they lay out these rules from the inception of this country, people keep acting like blacks were really a genuine part of it. Until blacks fought their way in the Civil War to free themselves,
Right.
blacks were still being oppressed, so there were systems in place that kept them oppressed. So when you just want to start talking about, we need to do a study about reparations, well, if you want to do a study about reparations, only thing you need to find out is do a study how many foundational blacks are in America and how do we pay them, because history has been documented that we've been messing over the black population in this country forever, since the country started.
Absolutely.
So why do we need to have a study to tell us how bad you've been messing us over?
Right.
You know, the rest, oh my God, Reconstruction was a clear example when I think it was for 21 black Congress members came into play in the United States government and after the Civil War, and they could not, the white America could not handle it. So what did they started doing?
That birthed Jim Crow.
Yes, they came up with other laws. They started killing, hanging, and they were doing it to us. When we were prospering, they just came and started wiping up some of our cities from Rosewood and any place else you want to call it, Chicago. They just burned cities down, burned down our Wall Street. They did everything they could to hurt us. So I don't understand why this country believes that they need to have a study to see if reparations is necessary, as opposed to saying reparations is needed, and let's identify who would qualify to be made whole under the rules that they've put in this country. And that takes me to my three-fifth clause. My three-fifth clause that I was able to get passed in the city council, urging Congress to amend the Constitution, saying that 29th Amendment, putting language in that totally negates the three-fifth clause, saying that the so-called black, that so-called person that you said was three-fifths of a human being for taxation and representation purposes, is 100% whole to their equal white counterparts. If you do that, then now everything lays a new conversation. No, you don't walk into Mississippi and everybody looks at you like something's wrong with you, or you have the right to hang me and get away with it. There is no Ahmaud Marbury that happens, you know, because that white guy thought it was okay to shoot a young kid, and which was technically a family of mine, my cousin's nephew. So these things are still happening. White law enforcement is still killing black kids and black adults. It's still happening, but until rules of engagement change and people are held accountable and punished and systems change, you and I will be having these conversations until you grow more hair again.
and I'm so glad you mentioned the three-fifth clause, because that does have a lot to play with a lot of things. And when you look at law enforcement on a whole, I believe it was in 2006, a federal memorandum from the FBI came out stating that the military, both the military and law enforcement, was infiltrated by white supremacist groups like the KKK and the Proud Boys and the skinheads and so forth and so on. And the reason that they infiltrated was so that they could kill black people with impunity. And now look where we're at. So Barack Obama, who would have taken, or President Barack Obama, 2 years later would have became president. He done nothing with that. He done nothing whatsoever. Donald Trump, I really didn't expect him to do anything. That's like asking for Christmas gifts on Halloween. But he didn't do nothing with that federal memorandum. Joe Biden is now in office, but he was in office with President Barack Obama, and he has not addressed it. So the issue is, like, you have white supremacy, you have gentrification. That's where I'm going next. You have gentrification, you have police brutality, you have a loaded justice system. Those are all symptoms of white supremacy racism. The root of all of that is white supremacy racism, but we act like it doesn't exist, and white supremacy racism is so refined that it could hide behind anything. Right. It could hide behind sex, it could hide behind housing, it could hide behind anything. Right. But we have to call that out what it is. And so what I honestly believe is that once that federal memorandum from the FBI came out, all of law enforcement at that time should have came under the jurisdiction of the federal government until they were able to weed out the problem. And so here we are trying to put a Band-Aid on an open wound You know what I mean? You could pretty much see the bone.
Right.
And you're trying to put a Band-Aid on and to fix it. It's not going to fix itself. The federal government has to get involved. In fact, I look at all of the injustices that is going on. It's the federal government's responsibility. It's their job. It's their negligence. So when you look at injustices that are going on, I don't blame someone in South Carolina. I blame the federal government.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. The sad reality of America is that no one wants to really address that America is an oppressive, racial, full of bigotry country.
Okay.
Capitalism is the root of a lot of hatred because the haves are always making sure that the have-nots don't get across the finish line the way they can, and they say they will. Of course, they'll let a few choice ones go across, just in the essence of saying that we are open for business and everyone has a great American dream. But if America really looks at its roots, and you know what, I won't even blame the government of today, but it was the government of yesterday who put it into place. So you have a responsibility as government to correct it or change it.
Okay.
But however, if you choose not to, then now you become a part of the facilitator of the rules because you didn't create the rules in the Constitution. You weren't here when the Constitution was formed.
Right.
You weren't here when the Bill of Rights was formed.
Right.
And for those who were around when the civil rights laws were being in place, well, some of them should take a look at that, what their role was in that as well. So if we start talking about some of the gun violence rules that were placed in place under President Clinton, how did that three-strike rule affect the black community? So again, if America really wants to say how do we be better to its people, the black population is the only population that's gone through what it's gone through on this world and this planet, from slavery to today. So government, if government really wants to, now here's another throwback for you. It's hard for government to do that. Because I asked a question a few years back when we celebrated John Lewis when he on the 50th year of civil rights. And I said, well, if John Lewis is here at 80 years of age, where is the Ku Klux Klan member? Where's that racial white person he was fighting with back in the 50s and 60s? If he's still here, where are they? They didn't just all fall off the planet. Their offspring didn't fall off the planet.
Right.
Well, they're in the sheriff's department. They're in government with him as well.
Right.
They're in positions of power running corporations.
Right.
So that means that same old God, that same old mentality is still here through the offsprings of the people who were massa back from yesteryear.
Right.
So if we start talking about how it's hard to tell somebody, listen, I've got this beautiful house where I'm the king, I got everything, then all of a sudden I want to give you the left wing, the right wing, the living room, just to say I want to be fair. No, they don't want to do that.
Right.
So it's hard to say, how do I go ask the oppressor to stop oppressing me when his job and his rules of engagement on the table are founded in oppression?
And you're leaning towards what I really believe. I believe the only solution for us is 100 complete sovereignty. We need to be sovereign from this country, pretty much how the Indians are. I mean, because theoretically, you know, the real Indians are black anyway, but that's another topic for another show, but I promise to touch on it. But what Indians essentially did, and this is the model we need to follow, is they lobbied their sovereignty against the land. And I'm gonna get back to that. I'm gonna take a real quick break, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna go back to that thought. All right? We'll be back. This is Kap or No Kap.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV. Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Former City Councilman Andy King, and we're in a deep conversation about black issues. I think when we left off the commercial, I was talking about how Indians were able to lobby their sovereignty against the land. Basically saying, we're sovereign because we are the people of this land. We are the natives of this land. And foundational black Americans can do the same thing. We could lobby our labor into sovereignty. But these are the conversations that the Congressional Black Caucus won't have. These are the conversations that most elected officials that are non-foundational black Americans won't have. And I don't want to just put it on those that are not congressional black, those that are not foundational black Americans, because you have some foundational black Americans that run away from the conversation as well. But we talk about uncomfortable conversations. I mean, I'm quick to, tell the truth and shame the devil, and the proof is in the pudding. We built this country by scratch. This is what makes us foundational. There are three things that make up a foundational black American. You have the Aborigine, indigenous people that has always been here. Because when you look at today's Native Americans, they call them redskin. Well, you can't get red without black. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So those were Mongoloids that came into the Americas during the Warrior Ice Age that mixed with the original people. But the original people never went anywhere. And to give you a little bit of history on that, when they created the Dawes Rolls, because the government said we're going to create a roll so we could identify these Indians, so we could give them benefits and resources. So they created the Dawes Rolls. And the problem with the Dawes Rolls was that some 300,000 Native Americans that were copper colored, that would look what we would classify today as black, Negro, or other, started showing up on those rolls. And the government said, whoa, wait a minute, we can't discriminate. What we're going to do is we're going to create a separate bureau called the Freedmen Bureau. And so they created a separate bureau, which was called the Freedmen Bureau, really to discriminate for those that were claiming their indigenous background. So y'all go over here. And they were supposed to pretty much get the same exact resources and so forth and so on that those that were on the Dawes Rolls got, but they didn't. What they did was, and this is going back to our whole permanent friends and permanent interests. So with the redskin or white, because if you look at the chiefs of any of today's what we would call the 5 civilized tribes, they're really Europeans perpetrating to be Native American. They're identity thieves, so they stole the identity. And so like myself, my family is from Charleston, South Carolina, and Edisto Island. And shout out to Edisto, I'll be down there soon. But I have an African background because I have a very Geechee Gullah. The word Gullah, it means Angola. And so I don't deny the African presence, but I also have a very indigenous Aborigine background in a Seminole tribe. The funny thing, Mr. King, there is no such thing as a Seminole Indian. The word Seminole itself only means runaway slave. And so when you look at today's chief of the Seminole tribe, he's a European. And the first thing I say, well, how did you become a runaway slave? Where? You know what I mean? It's identity theft. So, I'm going to digress. Let's go into some world news. Let's talk about what's going on in the Middle East with the Palestinians and Israel. Congressman Jamal Bowman and Congressman Richie Torres were kind of in a WWE on it. Richie Torres is like, well, I'm pro-Israel, and Congressman Jamal Bowman was like, well, he wasn't saying I'm pro-Palestine. He's just saying it's just not right how they're slaughtering the people. What's your take on that?
I think that it's a shame what is happening. The world is at war with itself. But even over there in the Holy Land, it's always been a forever war. Biblical, scriptures will tell you that these two entities will never come together, and if they ever should come together, that would be the end of the world.
Okay.
I've had the opportunity to visit Israel. I consider myself a Lord-fearing, Jesus kind of guy, following the scriptures based on the word of the Most High Christ.
Right.
Understanding a little bit of the essence of the Israelite in the Bible, which I identify and relate to because of what's been shared of who those folks are in this world today. No matter how many books tells us what we are, these land masses were not always the land masses that were named during the beginning of time. Through conquering of times, land masses and names have changed.
Right.
Well, the Bible is to start the day of the first day. If we're going back to the nation of Israel, there was the Abraham and Isaac, Jacob scenario that's in the Bible, and Isaac and Ishmael were brothers.
Okay.
And Isaac, which is Israel, Ishmael is the progenitor of what they would like to call Iran and Iraqi nations. So if they're supposed to be brothers, and then you get years of the fall of Israel, and then when the fall of Israel in 70 AD happens, and then you look at what Israel looked like then when they fell, and then the return of those in the Israel, quote, the state of Israel, they don't look like the original Israelite that was there. That's why they call themselves Israelis. They don't call themselves Israelites because they know the story. They're not the original Israelite in the Bible. But Ishmael knows that.
Right.
So Ishmael's like, you're not my brother's kids. So that's why that war is ever happening. So when you start talking about conquerors across this globe and conquerors from America to Israel, America and Israel are the same people from the tribe of Amalek. And I might be getting a little deep into some stuff.
No, that's cool.
But when you start getting into the tribes that are actually on this earth, people get to understand that America, which is from the lineage of Esau, which is red and hairy all over, and Amalek are some from the same family. But the nation of Israel, Jacob, Jacob, are not from that same tribe. So when you start breaking that stuff down, you get to understand why Palestine, the so-called Arabs that are over there are at war with so-called Israel today because they know they're not from their lineage, they're not from the same bloodline, which scriptures tell you that they are from the same bloodline. So there's always going to be that fight. So now anytime there is a political stand that has to happen, if me and you are brothers or you are my brothers, there's no way I'm going to bomb your house over some political stuff. Right. I'm not going to destroy your kids. I'm not going to destroy your whole essence. But you can look at them and see clearly there's no relationship.
Well, I guess the concept, and I mean, like, I don't really necessarily follow the moral compass of neither the Bible or the Quran. See, right. Because you have biblical history, you have world history. And when you put it on the scale, it doesn't balance. One is always going to be heavier than the other. So I look at it from a world history standpoint. But I can understand what you're saying because it goes back to what I just said in terms of white Seminoles. Yeah, you know what I mean? That doesn't even happen. You know what I mean? It's just like it gives birth to that whole argument. So I absolutely what you're saying.
And I want to add to that because You know, the word savage, I've been living here before you got here.
Right.
And your term of American history and world history, where you want to create words, how are you going to call me a savage?
Right.
But I've been sitting here living off the land, comfortably following rules, doing whatever, you know,
Right.
the spiritual world is telling me to do. You enter into this landmass, give me a name called Indian, meaning savage, and do all
To identify me, right.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden that becomes my reality.
Right.
And then you tell me what to do with the land. I got to fight to keep a piece of part of my land. You kill off all of us. People keep forgetting what they did to them with the smallpox and the blankets. You know, when they tried to come and have a peace treaty,
right.
you killed off billions of, you know. So you never worked in genuine faiths. So we start talking about today how the Caucasian male has always operated in disingenuine faith. They're just consistent. The rest
Right.
of us are just part of being the victims of their activities
And
and
they're
actions.
quick to say that we have this, what they call it, toxic masculinity. That's what's given to us. Oh, this is toxic masculinity, but this is what the Creator, and I don't want you to think I'm atheist. Maybe the Bible's not my moral compass, but I do subscribe to a higher being other than myself.
Yeah.
So, but this was what was given to us,
Right.
as a form of protection, to protect our family, protect our women, protect our children, so forth and so on. So toxic masculinity is just simply, what it does is, it shows that our masculinity is so strong, because our masculinity has always been a threat to the system of white supremacy, always. Mm-hmm. And if something is a threat to you, well, what do? You reduce the threat. And when you reduce the threat, you feminize black men, and now you're at a state of genocide.
You feminize them, you criticize till you ostracize, you kill them. And people keep forgetting that blacks in America have gone through hundreds of years of oppression, mind-altering activities,
right.
bullying, all kind of things to change the psyche. So the strong black man, and I say to all respect to George Floyd, and George Floyd was a big, strong black man.
Right.
This little Caucasian guy, because of the mindset that they placed us in, was allowed to kill a big, large black man.
That's crazy.
Trust me, when it came to the ages of slavery, when they were bringing us, not every white person got away with what Chauffeur did to Floyd. No, you know what I'm saying? But the beat down of the black mind and the black existence has made.
You have to psychologically reduce them first.
Exactly, and I stop and I say this because if anyone's seen the movie 12 Years a Slave,
okay,
there was a point when the brother was being hung. Mm-hmm. And while he was being hung, he was on his tippy toes, trying to survive, and all the other slaves were just moving around, walking around, carrying the food, moving around, washing clothes, like there was nothing going on.
Right.
So they were so conditioned that if we were even to try to save that brother, that could happen to us.
Right.
And that's what happens to us today. If there's a case that so-called blacks or so-called the Negro has to save another black person that's going down, they won't do anything. After a person is killed, everybody wants to shout and scream and shout. How about screaming and shouting about the things that are going on when it's happening,
right,
to stop it before the death occurs? Because of the mental beatdown, so many in the black community and the Negro community won't stand up and have the real fight for fear of their own self-preservation.
That's right. That's right. And it's crazy because we've adopted this philosophy and this mentality that we will treat each other like ferocious lions, but when we get when we're in the face of the system of white supremacy, we are the lion from the Wizard of Oz. We ain't got no courage, and you know what I mean. So it's definitely a mental conditioning, and I mean I just really wanted to touch on that. You know, I love the fact that I'm able to touch on these issues on this show, that I have a platform to touch on these issues. You know, we've discussed a lot of things. We've discussed politics, a little bit of religion. Now, I want to talk about veterans, because Memorial Day is coming up really soon, and you know, a lot of people don't even realize the essence of Memorial Day really came from the Civil War, and it was, I believe, the Confederates, black soldiers that were, because a lot of people think just black folk fought on the side of the North. We fought on both sides. you know, and we still haven't corrected anything here. But it was the black soldiers that was slaughtered in a battle that was just left in the street to rot. And the people of that town dug a mass grave, and they put them in there, and they, you know, tried to bury them with some type of dignity. And that is what became Memorial Day. That's the origin of Memorial Day. And, you know, that's another one of the holidays that, well, I can't say another one, but that's one of the holidays, I should say, that the European in this country took and brought into, they popularized it. So, I mean, I'm a firm believer that we need to take certain things back or try to identify what those certain things mean. Like, for instance, some people say, oh, well, I'll never eat, I don't celebrate Thanksgiving. Yeah, you do. You just don't. You do it by default. You know what I mean? So instead of saying you don't do something, just say, well, try to apply that experience. Well, what does Thanksgiving mean to a foundational Black American? What does these holidays mean to us as a family? And see, the system of white supremacy was always based off of destroying a family. That's why they sold us apart. Because if we came together as a family, we would be unstoppable. I think we're running out of time. I really enjoy having you. I would love, because I do have two co-hosts, and shout out to Asha Castleberry and Janaea Butler. But I would love to have you come on periodically and join us in the future. But we could be seen on Roku television, Apple TV. That if you have an iPhone, iPhone or Android, download the app Millennium TV 24 or M24 News, and follow us. You know, follow this show, No Kap or No Kap. Again, we're on Roku TV. We're on Apple TV, we're on Amazon, and we have Android and iPhones. You could download us. This is Kevin C. Meggett. I'm with Kap or No Kap. Thank you very much, Mr. King. I would love to bring you back, and maybe we could even bring you back as a special correspondent for other shows. I appreciate you.
I'd be honored.
So would I. Thank you so much. Have a good day and have a good night.